I have indeed smashed that record button. There we go.
Excellent. Ring some kind of levels bell and we'll be all good.
What?
I don't know about you, but I'm fucking sick of lockdown. I'm so sick of being in this flat. I hate being in, like, the room I'm in at the moment, the office. I hate it. I don't like being in here unless I have to be, because I spend all day in here at work and then spend all this is where my computer is. And so I just spent too much time in here and there's nothing to do. And I'm so astonishingly bored all the time.
And what are you trying to do about that boredom? Or have you got past even trying?
Well, I'm still trying to do stuff. Like, I go out and I try and take pictures, go out for nice walks. I've obviously been doing building stuff recently.
Actually, this does explain why you've done so much building.
It's finally broken
me. An uncharacteristic amount of building. This
is what it took. There's a global pandemic. It needs to be like 9. How many months are we in? 11 months into a global pandemic, and then I'll start building stuff.
If this goes on another year, you'll have a heavyweight.
Pretty much. Or 1 million Beatles. I've got so many ideas for Beatles at the moment.
These are things that I'd almost completely pegged you out of at this point.
Oh dear, it takes so much effort to like set it all up, and then I make such a colossal mess in either the office or in the living room, which I then got to tidy up so that if I've done it in here, I need to tidy up so that I can work, and if I'm in the living room, I need to tidy up so that Hannah can work. It's a lot of effort, a lot of hoops to jump through to do this, and I've done it anyway.
What if you just left the mess in the living room and hoped that Hannah would tidy it up instead? That's the totally healthy way of doing these things.
That would be an awful thing for me to do, and I'm not going to do that.
I was always impressed by how quickly we tidied up after building. 2 people tidying stuff, even though I was rarely doing much of use, is surprisingly fast. I imagine that with just you, it is painfully slow.
I think it takes about 20 minutes to tidy it all up afterwards. So it's not too bad, it's just annoying.
Let's face it, considering setting up is probably going to take about that much time as well, it does mean that mentally you need to commit yourself to a good couple of hours of doing stuff to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean the setup time is sort of hides itself in the process, right? Because I get the tools out one at a time, and so over the course of half an hour of tinkering with something, I'll look around the room and suddenly realise, oh, there's tools everywhere, completely unorganised mess. The desk is a state, and then I've got to put it all away. So it's not too bad setup. But, well, it depends actually. So the other day when I had like the work table thing out and stuff, that was more of a setup. But we'll get there. We'll get to it.
I remember the main thing with Hello there was just finding all the parts we'd already made and getting those organised.
I've gotten better about leaving all that, like having like I've got like a little surface that's clear of stuff, and so that I can put works in progress on it, so that I sort of know where all that stuff is now.
I have a whole box of that, and now I can't find anything in that box because it's bloody full. If I go out into the shed to do any work tomorrow, the first thing I need to do is find the bloody chuck key for the lathe.
Lathe?
Because I was drilling out...
Lathe?
Sorry, the lathe. The pillar drill. Where did I get lathe from?
I don't know, but if you had a lathe, I'd be incredibly jealous.
Yeah, the first thing I'm going to have to do is find that, because I was just drilling out the parts that I'd made today to size. And on the last bloody one, I've just put the chuck key down somewhere, and I've got no idea where. Which means I just won't go out and do anything tomorrow, because I will be too pissed off that I have to start my day that way.
Oh dear. It's the little things.
It's actually quite a big chuck key.
You just have to be clever, don't you? You just have to have the smart response to everything.
I mean, if you consider that clever, then I don't want to know what you consider dumb.
Not wearing a mask. Whoa! Topical.
Oh! Right. How are we starting this one properly then?
Speaking of not wearing a mask, Peter!
He was trying and failing.
That's that, yeah. We're not going to leave that in. I'm going to cut that out.
That is a topic in itself. Right, you know what? Screw it. I'm starting here.
Oh no.
I don't know if everyone has this experience, but I'm a pretty beardy boy. And no matter what I'm doing, if I wear a mask, I've got probably up to a minute and a half before that thing rides up and starts tickling my eyeballs. I feel so bad. Well, not bad, but I have so much empathy for anyone on Battlebots who is trying to focus on driving a robot while that is happening to them. The fact that people can go 3 minutes without having to adjust, or they are adjusting and still driving through it, genuine superheroes to me.
I'm not. It's funny with the masks and stuff when you sort of see them like not on properly or whatever. It's like my first reaction is to be annoyed. I just have that knee-jerk reaction of being annoyed. But there is so much going on, and you can see that people are trying. They're doing their best, and most of the time it's fine. It's just like during driving things or if they're at their pit table and stuff, where they're doing other things, and like you say, the masks move around, especially as you talk and stuff. So I try to be a bit forgiving of it, but it's amazing how much I can't ignore it. You know, if they're like, so I've been like I see this on YouTube videos as well, where someone, you know, they've met up with someone and they've got masks on or whatever, or those like weird neck things and stuff, and then they spend the entire video as they're talking kind of just touching the mask and adjusting it and fiddling with it. And I can't not see that, and it drives me up the wall.
It's going to be very hard to watch things from this sort of period of time in future and not just see that. It's like, I do worry that this series of Battlebots, and you know, possibly the next one, depending how things go, let's be real here, I think they're going to lose a lot of replay value for me, purely because I'm not sure this is something I'm going to want to be reminded of in a couple of years' time.
No.
Or longer, who knows.
Ugh.
Icky topic. Bad topic. Change it.
You say we can remind ourselves of more joyful times.
Oh, boy, can we.
I hear there's a special from Battlebots. Would you like to tell us about it?
Yeah. So, because arbitrary numbers are still very important on YouTube, Battlebots recently hit 4K and are celebrating with a special little top 10 fights, because, you know, YouTube, got to have a top 10 as well. And what I absolutely love about this whole segment that we're doing here is that they've released a poll to decide the top 10 out of a sort of shortlist of 30. And we're on that shortlist of 30. So what I should be doing right now is encouraging everyone to go and vote for us. But we're recording this on the day that poll closes. Because we haven't made an episode for like 5 weeks. This thing came out 2 weeks ago. It's super old news. And we can't even try and direct people our way because we made episodes too slowly.
We've missed our opportunity. Does this mean that we're not influencers? I feel like I've just hurt Ryan. So.
Oh, you've got me thinking about this properly. I don't like it when I have to think about questions properly. I've just been watching Tom Scott's influencer advert video, which is brilliant, by the way. Everyone should watch it.
Absolutely.
And it has made me think about a lot of things and how they don't affect us and how we can just happily say that we really love, you know, said brand or product and not have to care.
Yeah.
And we can constantly joke about not being sponsored. Although, again, if that Wilco sponsorship wants to present itself, bolts and screws for days. But no, I think it's fair to say that on a certain scale, everyone is an influencer. We all influence someone. Some people influence more someones than others. And everyone can decide where we fall on that scale. But I think our Twitter analytics would probably say that we're not particularly influential. That was worse.
We influence tens of people. Tens.
That's right. I'm just so looking forward to hearing back what on earth I just made out of those 2 words.
Who knows? Who knows? Can we see Twitter analytics? I don't know how to do that. I'll save it for...
You'll be able to. I can't, because I can't remember the Twitter password.
Is this why you never look at the tweets?
Yeah, I have to go onto TweetDeck to access our tweets.
I mean, I think I do as well, to be honest. I'm not sure I know. Let me see if I can sign in to our own Twitter account.
I mean, if you could tell me the password now, that'd be pretty good.
I genuinely don't know what it is. Will my password manager save me? No. Right. All right. Right. I will deal with the Twitter account another time, not while I'm recording.
This is not the time to do this. Why are we doing this now?
This is not the time.
This has been a mess of an opening, hasn't it? It's because our whole episode is a mess. It's just stuff in an order.
Oh dear. Right, so Battlebots 4K special. You should go watch it. We'll put a link in to this channel, I guess, in the show notes.
I mean, it hasn't been made yet.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying, but we'll put a link to the channel and subscribe if you're not. I don't know, we'll do something, okay? We'll do something.
We're going to put a link in a video to a channel that probably won't release another video for weeks, if not months. Who are they? Us? Right. Big Battlebots opinion dump time.
Oh, yeah, okay, let's do it.
We're not covering 5 episodes in one. We've got a few things we want to talk about. I think they're mostly just things that I want to talk about that you're going to tolerate. Is that fair?
Yep.
In which case, you'd better intro them so that you get to say something.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that, Ryan has given me some lines here. I'm going to try and stretch it out as much as I can. Get my voice in this shit. Get my voice in this podcast.
Oh, this is just going to be what it's going to be, isn't it? We've got no control anymore.
Gesturing with my hands, just send my water bottle flying. Right.
Keep it in. Let's go.
We're professionals. Well, I've successfully stretched out my segment a little bit longer.
You have,
Calm down. And do you want to talk about P1?
Yes. I want to go on record as stating that I really bloody like P1. And I'm really sad that we're not going to get to see a considerable amount more of that robot. I think it is one of very few robots in the field that is the only of its kind in the field. How many others can you really say that for? Fusion, I suppose, with the whole different dual weapon thing. Mammoth with the whole rotary lifter thing. Rusty, I guess, as well. There aren't that many genuinely unique robots that are also competitive and have shown that competitiveness. P1 is one of them, and I don't necessarily want to get to the whole top 32 should have been there thing, but yeah, really sad that they're out at this point. I would watch that robot all day, and the Smee fight, I think, shows exactly why I love it so much. And Smee, to be fair.
I think one of the really subtle things, or maybe it's not that subtle, I don't know, but one of the things about P1 that I think makes for good television is that they don't let a fight end early. Like in the 2 fights of theirs that we've seen, they've had their opponent stuck up against a wall, and I think could have left them there and won the fights easily, but didn't. Have always freed them, and I think that's sort of like they've always made sure that there is a fight of some decent length, which I think is very commendable.
I'm guessing they didn't do that in the Kronos fight, and that might be what has cost them a top 32 place. Because that will presumably have been quite a dull fight. And I'm guessing they learned very quickly from that. And we definitely saw that against Smee. We saw it in one of their Bounty Hunters fights as well, where they have sort of shown that commitment to entertainment. Which, when you're already a kind of... I mean, in the Smee fight, you kind of understand it a bit more, but the Tracer fight, they took a lot of damage after doing that.
They did, yeah. They did.
Man, I always want more front hinges. It was good to see as well, actually. While we're talking about the P1 Smee fight as if we really are. Smee in that fight, huge improvement. When they actually sped it up to something nearer normal Smee levels of speed and agility, that looks like a completely different machine. And I know we've agreed not to really talk about Bounty Hunters, but obviously Bounty Hunters being shot after this, that is the Smee that we get to see in Bounty Hunters as well.
Ooh, interesting.
And I just hope that they haven't kind of lost their one chance with their first 2 performances this season and get a chance to bring that version or something better than it along next time. P1, I'm really scared, have now had their 2 chances at Battlebots. And that would be a real shame.
Why do you think that they would not apply again, or do you think that Battlebots are sort of like, we're done with you now, never come back, we're not going to let you back in unless you do a new robot?
I mean, Battlebots don't like wedges.
Mm-hmm.
P1 is very wedgy. They don't really seem to like non-spinners in general. And I think if a robot has had 2 seasons and hasn't impressed them enough to make a top 32 this season, in a future season that we know is going to be heavily oversubscribed, it does seem like the kind of robot they wouldn't bring back.
Yeah, but then they kept bringing Shredderator back despite many years of disappointment.
Legacy. See, this is... I'm just going to do it. I didn't want to do this, but I'm going to do it. the selection process they seem to have, specifically for the top 32, does seem to put a lot of weight on past performances and pedigree. You know, we see that with the likes of Tombstone and Witch Doctor coming through with just one win. And I think that both of those are completely fair. Because the whole idea of Fight Night seems to just be prove yourself. Prove that you are worthy of this place in the top 32. And it's just a fundamental fact that some robots have more to prove than others. All something like Witch Doctor or Tombstone has to do is turn up and show that they still work. And realistically, you'd expect them to make that bracket.
Is there anyone in
And if they've lost against good machines, then fine. And I think Hypershock has kind of got through on the same. And just in terms of popularity, they're robots and people that viewers by and large want to see more of. And that I'm fine with. But I'm worried that it also goes the other way. Some robots would have to prove the world to get there. And I think P1 is one of the ones where Battlebots would need to see so much from them to take them through that I'm not sure what it would actually take for them to get there, realistically. And that I'm not so happy about. I feel like there should be a sort of ceiling level of what you need to prove. And surely winning a majority of your matches against decent opposition meets and beats that minimum. Surely.
Yeah, I don't know.
It seemed like you were going to come in with a question at one point there and I cut you off.
I was going to ask if there's any robots in the top 32 with 0 wins.
No.
They haven't done that yet.
Not yet. I mean, I do wonder what they would have done if Witch Doctor had lost to Slamo.
Yeah.
I could see them still being brought through, and I'm not sure I'd have a massive problem if that did happen.
I'd say, see, like, the thing is, right, so if someone got through with 0 wins, I'd have a problem with that. Like, if Witch Doctor did it on no wins, I would honestly feel like, well, what's the point in the Fight Night bit before it if the stakes for some robots don't seem to exist, you know? I think that only matters if there is a chance that robots like Witch Doctor and Tombstone and all that lot might not make it. Obviously, they have to. Obviously, the bar for them is in many, like you were sort of saying, is possibly a bit lower to make it into the top 32. But like, there has to be a bar, otherwise it's just a waste of time.
I mean, if, for example, Tombstone comes into a season, breaks down 3 times, then I'm saying they don't make it. But if they come out and have 3 good fights that they narrowly lose, or 2 good fights they narrowly lose, and one where they just get beaten quite convincingly by a robot that we know is the kind of thing they're likely to be weak against, I'd still be saying maybe they can come through. Because you look at Tombstone and you know, provided it's working, it will produce an entertaining fight. Which is, let's face it, the goal of this selection process. It isn't to bring the best through, it's to guarantee entertainment going forwards. That's really what they're selecting for. And a robot like Tombstone or Witch Doctor or whatever, you do expect that from. So say Witch Doctor had kept the same discs that kept breaking for their 3rd fight, and had had the same problem again, you would still be looking at them and going, well, if they can get new discs in for their next fight, we know they're going to be fine, everything else is working. So even in that situation, I could see why you would give them a pass. Not saying it's what I would want to happen, but if it happened, I would understand it. From a production point of view in particular.
Even with the point, yeah, even like with the sort of they're making a TV show thing, I still think that there needs to be stakes for the Fight Night stuff. Like I do just think it completely undermines, because so in all their sort of like pre-fight and post-fight sort of like talks and stuff, they're like, we've got to win this, otherwise we're not going to get in there. We've got to do it. We've got to win this. Like, this is it. This is the last chance we have to prove that we're worthy and stuff. And then if they had all that stuff in there and then lost the fight and then still made it to the top 32, it'd be like, well, you're just sort of like making a mockery of the audience's investment in that in many ways. It's sort of like you just sort of completely pulled the rug out from sort of all these stakes that you've been trying to build up for the teams and for the audience. It's like, well, actually, if you've got the right, if you're a big name robot, then it doesn't matter what you do.
But if you're investing an audience into this idea that the record alone is what matters, then they're already not living up to that.
I'm not saying it should be the record alone. Like, I think there is room for. I guess it's the extremes that I'm ranting against, and maybe I'm probably just having an argument for the sake of having an argument. I don't think there's necessarily any real push to sort of like have this happen. It's purely hypothetical. So what does it matter, I suppose. But I'm just saying that, like, I don't think you should have it be possible to win with 0 fights. But no one's done that, so who cares?
This is, I guess, a weakness of only having 3 fights as well. Because if we're talking 4 losses, then yeah, absolutely not. But with the 3, it does introduce that little bit more wiggle room. All of the records are a bit closer anyway. In some respects, winning all 3 isn't remotely as impressive as winning all 4 would be. At least not to me. I don't know why I feel that, but...
I don't know why you feel that either.
I mean, didn't Kylo Ren win 3 matches?
I hope not. doesn't deserve to.
No, exactly. Actually, what did it win? Oh no, only won 2. It's fine. Ignore me. I've made this about us for no reason. Imagine it. Oh God. Ugh.
Yeah.
No.
It continues to be a disappointment. It's fine.
Yeah, I think the whole selection process isn't about any of the things that they really say it's about. I think they will find a reason to bring forward the robots they want to, and find a reason to not bring forward the ones they don't.
Yeah.
To the point where I do honestly believe that a big name could lose all 3 fights and still get through. And I don't know, maybe it's like a weird version of Stockholm Syndrome that I've decided to make myself okay with that.
So I believe that they do that. I just don't think that's a good idea.
I mean, do you mean specifically the 3 losses thing? Or do you mean the more general records don't matter as much as they say?
I think they'd bring... I think that if it was a big enough named robot, they'd bring him through on 3 or 4 losses. I think they'd do that, and I don't think they should. And I guess I'm not quite as Stockholm Syndromed as you, and I'm not going to convince myself that's okay.
I mean, it makes sense that I'd come to the syndrome faster, doesn't it? I'm far more in love with my captors than you are.
Yeah.
Wow, that went in a different direction to that which I expected.
Naturally.
Quite a negative direction, but there we are.
Sorry.
Other robot I particularly wanted to talk about was Beta.
Mm-hmm.
Which, is this going in a positive direction? Is this going in a negative direction? Do I even know at this point? Let's find out.
I mean, their weapon works. We've seen that now.
Oh, yeah. It really works.
I still wish they'd use it more.
I mean, we definitely saw them use it against Grabot. We saw them use it almost gratuitously.
Yeah, and that's what I want.
But it seems as though they can't really use it while moving.
No, probably not.
So this magnet system they've got is incredible. Watching that thing fire against Grabot and not even flinch, it took a while to wrap my head around. It's funny because it makes it look so much less powerful.
It does, yeah. It's so weird.
But we know it's going to be increasing the actual power that goes into that swing a ridiculous amount. That has to be having a massive impact on the power of that swing. That is just efficiency in action.
It was so weird seeing like the first few hits on Grabot and sort of like, is that all? Like, nothing's happening. There's no power in it. And then, of course, Grabot starts smoking and stuff, and you get a few more close-ups, and you go, okay, yeah, there's a lot of power there. And, of course, there's the magnets that stops it from sort of like visibly doing the stuff. But it is a funny sort of sight to see all that power and sort of nothing happen in Beta. It's weird.
And again, I love seeing it, if only as sort of an exercise in confusion. But it is very clearly impacting their strategy in fights. And so far, it has made their strategy deathly boring to watch. I'd come into this season basically supporting the big 3 hammers. Chomp, knowing it probably wouldn't end that well, but screw it, it'll be a fun ride. Shatter, with moderate expectations, and then Beta with very high expectations. And I was also supporting Hydra, actually. I'm now down to supporting Shatter. Because Beta, while incredibly impressive, sort of in terms of the technology, and in some ways in terms of the performance, fantastic performance against Rotator. The driving and the drive, superb. Fantastic performance in terms of sheer weapon power against Grabot. But with the 2 never really coming together, it's just been so frustrating to watch.
Yeah. I hadn't considered the fact that they can't fire the weapon while they're driving. And I think now that you've mentioned that, like, replaying the fights in my mind's eye, it makes a lot more sense why they've done what they've done. I sort of like get it a lot more now, which I think would make it less frustrating to watch now that I've sort of know that. But But yeah, it is. They are the fight. The fight is big. They're never as exciting as I want them to be. They're never quite as satisfying and stuff. And I'm still, there are so many times when you're just like fire the weapon, but they're still chasing the robot. So I guess they just can't.
I wouldn't be surprised if they can fire while moving, just without the magnets or with less magnet. But you feel like they're not really going to do it from what we've seen so far. It's like, the fight against Rusty, there was basically no risk to just using the weapon a bit more. Just flail around madly. Why not? What do you have to lose? Grabot the same, really. And okay, they've really gone for it at the end. But what are you really showing by doing that? You're showing that you can beat on an already dead robot that wasn't competitive in the first place, and we presume wasn't exactly trying to be. You might as well have just put a box in the arena and hit that. You would. I'm not trying to say that Grabot is the equivalent to a box, but in terms of what you're actually demonstrating, in terms of your ability, they're quite similar situations. It's just really hard to know what to expect from them going forwards. I'm hoping that when we get into the top 32, they go sort of full berserker mode
They
and
won't.
hit everything, and it's brilliant, and I will be straight back on that bandwagon if I actually see the hammer doing things in critical moments in fights.
I think they are being and will continue to be incredibly conservative with that machine. I think they will continue to not fire the weapon and unless they've got their opponent in a corner not moving. I think that seems to be the condition that they need to fire the weapon. Whether that's a technical need or just a desire on the driver's part, I don't know, but that seems to be what they're waiting for. I think that they will. Obviously it's well driven, so there's still sort of like, it's nice sort of seeing that, but they won't fire the weapon the way that we want them to. I don't think they'll do that at all. I think they're too. They don't want to do damage to the robot, I don't think, or unnecessary damage, I guess, is what they're trying to avoid.
Which makes so much sense, and I feel bad for not liking that, but come on, it's a hammer. It's what it's for. It's there to flail around and hit things really hard, and sometimes miss and flip around even more. It's just, so frustrating.
Yep.
Again, maybe if we ever build a good hammer, we'll start understanding more how they feel.
I've said this before and I shall say it again. I do not think I have the self-control to drive like that in a fight. I think we've made plans of like, we're going to hang back. We're going to sort of let other, like, in the three ways and stuff we've been in, we're going to hang back, let the other robots go. And then I just drive face first into the spinner because it's fun and I will always do that.
Again, disclaimer, much easier for us to say that with our Beetle than with a sort of big, expensive, fancy heavyweight, but be more Shatter. Let's just take all of the hammers and replace them with copies of Shatter.
Oh, no.
And everything will just be better. Maybe not Chomp. Chomp can stay. It's like, if Extinguisher wants to bring their hammer in, great. Give them a copy of Shatter for the day. Mad Catter want to bring their hammer in. Paint a face on the front of Shatter. They can have it for the day.
I cannot believe that you, Mr. Complains about the meta being all vertical spinners, is advocating for all hammers being the same.
I see, it's okay if they don't actually win very much. That's how it works. Everything in robot combat is morally acceptable until it's successful, and then it's evil. Brilliant. That's why we must never succeed. I mean, look what happened when we sort of did. It was awful. It was terrible. We don't want that. I want to go back to losing with dignity.
I just have to keep fighting with hello there then.
I mean, I would. That's the problem. Anyway, making it about us. Let's move on.
We never do that.
Man, we did this in a weird order, didn't we?
We certainly did.
Next mini topic of note, we just wanted to talk about Kraken versus Huge for a minute.
Oh my goodness me. What an amazing fight. Right, the first time we saw Kraken, right, I was like, what is this robot? Silly, don't like it. But boy was I wrong. I love Kraken and I love the team. Like, they've completely won me over through this season in particular and this fight as well. I was like, when I saw this lineup, I was like, oh, that's a shame. Kraken's just going to get utterly wrecked and there's nothing they can do about it. And then they got a grab on the body of Huge and it was incredible and glorious and everything I ever wanted in life. So I was happy.
It's amazing what the addition of... I've never been a big flamethrower fan. It's amazing what the addition of a flamethrower to any grabber does. So Gruff, Deadlift, Kraken, love all of them. Just, yes, please. Just for the potential that flamethrower might do something.
Yeah.
And in this fight, boy, was it close to doing something. So that is the ideal situation for a flamethrower. That 30 seconds, holding on to a bit that might actually be bothered by some flames.
Yeah.
And the tension as you waited for Kraken to release to see if Huge could still spin up was borderline unbeatable. And then the rest of the fight lives up as well. I think this fight might genuinely be near the top of my list of fights to show newcomers to this sport. It's that good.
I would say so.
It's interesting. I think lots of us looked at this fight and kind of went, oh, yep, Huge has been given an apology for what happened before, you know. Been given a fight that more suits it. You know, what could Kraken possibly do? Oh, that, okay. Damn, we should have seen that coming. Well, actually, no, we shouldn't have seen that coming, because that was an incredible piece of driving to intentionally wheelie in to get that grab. That's stunning, whatever way you look at it.
Yeah. It was so good, I'm not even going to play my usual I bet it was luck card. I think that was fully intentional.
Wow.
That's how much I like this fight.
Wow. That's unheard of. If I could frame a piece of audio, I would.
This is like such a good fight because, like, so for like newcomers and stuff, because it's these two quite visually striking robots. They're so different to each other, and then it's an interesting fight, and it's got all the tension, and it's exciting, and that's brilliant. And then it's really good for people who think they know what's going on as well, because it's unexpected. Like I wasn't expecting that. You weren't expecting it and stuff. Like it's just good. It's just a good fight. It's just what we want. More of that, please.
It's interesting to me as well that a fight that really is such a one-sided judge's decision was still actually pretty close. Both robots got a chance to do exactly what they were trying to do on at least a couple of occasions in that fight. Kraken has got the grab. It's got the weird attachment in at a couple of points as well.
Yeah.
And Huge obviously has managed to hit it with the big spinny thing. I don't think... Maybe the producers are actually geniuses and really saw the potential in that fight. Maybe they knew all along that this was going to be good. But I honestly think this is just an incredibly happy accident, and I'm so glad it happened.
Yeah.
Isn't it sad that we've run out of things to say about this brilliant thing so much faster than we ran out of things to say on the last two things?
I know. This
does explain why the Reddit and the Facebook group and everywhere are just such a massive shit show most of the time, doesn't it? This is human nature at its worst.
Yeah, it's just easier to be outraged about things than it is to be in praise of things. I'm going to do some more praise for Kraken and the team behind it and stuff, who are like the opposite of Beta, right? In that they will just stick their robot anywhere. You feel like you could put them against anyone and they will just drive full speed at it and give it everything. And I'm so glad they do that, and I have so much respect for it.
And the best thing is, it's a strategy that's really working for them.
Yeah, it's paid off.
The way they've built this robot to deal with the design they will most commonly come up against, it's brilliant. You know, that idea of the whole mouth basically being kind of an inverted wedge that takes a vert in and pretty much stops it dead. That's damn smart. And then the driving that goes with it, exceptionally well driven. The weapon itself, I've come to terms with it not being a crusher now and being more of a grabber. Really well utilised all of the time. The durability of it has got everything I want in a robot.
Yeah.
And costumes that annoy the Helichopper team, so it's even better.
Oh dear. Yeah, costumes. You know what? I'm on board with the costumes as well. That's the extent to which they've won me over.
Other thing I love about them that I only recently learned, those teeth are forged.
Blimey.
I can't quite remember what they're using as the raw material for it. But yeah, just heat them up, beat them into shape. How many other robots do you think have a forged part on them? I'll tell you how many. Bloody none. Even Blacksmith didn't. You're not even trying, are you? Get with your own theme.
Shall we forge something for our robots?
I mean, we do have a foundry at work.
What? Where do you work?
Mate, we're going to get on this later. My work is bloody awesome, okay? We'll save that for later on. It really is. It's so cool right now.
Oh, man.
What a great fight. Two great teams, both deservedly into the top 32. Don't have a great deal of hope for either of them in their matchups, but there we go. Oh, and again, Kraken, great performer in Bounty Hunters as well. Put on a great show.
Excellent.
Or multiple shows. Who knows? No spoilers here.
Now, do we want to bring things down again, or should we just move on?
We've got to. We can't be the rules and judging people without going into this.
Oh, fine.
Tombstone Scorpios, the count out. I really, really wanted there to be some editing shenanigans going on that made that look weirder than it was. But by all accounts, that's exactly how it happened. And I just don't understand. It doesn't affect the outcome of the fight whatsoever, realistically. It's gonna go the way it's gonna go. But as someone who cares about rules and fairness, and just knowing the knock-on effect that something like this will have on the way people behave in the rest of a tournament, such a perfect storm of crap.
So what don't you understand? Is it the count out or people's reaction to it?
I never understand people's reactions to these things. But the count out.
Okay.
How can you be counting out a robot that is still mobile and still being actively attacked by an opponent? For seasons upon seasons, we've had robots clearly crab walking, not being counted out. This season, episode 1, I think it was, Hydra versus Witch Doctor. Hydra barely moved out of the blue square for the final minute of the fight. And that has consistently been allowed to happen. And now a robot that's still moving, its weapon is still working, is moving around a bit weird-like, and suddenly we're counting that out. I guarantee you, I shouldn't guarantee you, but for the purposes of hyperbole and presentation, I guarantee you that Tombstone could have moved across the arena as fast as Chomp does while it's working fully. And that is not a criticism of Chomp at all. That is mobility, that is fine. So the mobility that Tombstone had should also be fine. I'm not angry, I'm just confused.
Yeah, it's funny, like, when I was watching it, it seemed abrupt, and I sort of, like you, I think, sort of assumed there was some weird editing that had happened, because it was such a weirdly abrupt count-out. But I was also, like, going, well, Tombstone has clearly lost its wheel, like, really early on in the fight. But you're right, that you're absolutely right, that has never been a cause for counting out before. You know, if it's still being attacked and stuff all the time, then they can't count it out because they can't show that it's not moving. So, yeah, you're right.
And the funny thing is, if that wheel was still on and was locked, he'd probably have less mobility and I'd see more calls for a count out. Because he's managed to eject that wheel, if anything, he's got some mobility back.
Can you imagine that was a design feature, just ejecting wheels?
Explosive bolts. Just staging for wheels.
The wheel has been compromised. It's like shark teeth. The wheel has been compromised. Blow the outer ones off and there's some extra wheels on the inside.
I just realised you're a good person to talk about for this. Because you've driven basically an entire fight with a drive wheel missing, haven't you? At Euros.
I think so, yeah.
And you got around pretty damn well.
You can still move, yeah.
So it definitely can be done. We saw it with Daedalus as well. As much as we probably argued the opposite in that case, but yeah, consistency doesn't matter. We saw it with Daedalus as well, and again, from talking to Cosmin afterwards, he gave a detailed explanation of all the things he was doing to keep himself moving. You know, things he's doing with the weapon throttle to sort of influence the way he moves and sort of synergise with the wheel that is left. You can do a lot on that one wheel, and Ray seemed to be doing that. You know, he was still quite actively landing hits on his opponent.
It was strange, and it was funny, like, Ray's reaction to it at the end as well. It was sort of like, he did seem quite genuinely sort of surprised and shocked and like, what the hell's going on and stuff. Yeah, it all very... It's been such a weird season, hasn't it, for all of this kind of stuff. Such a weird season. Credit
to Ray, by the way, for that interview, where he clearly came in still quite annoyed. Got that first sentence out, I think just heard how it sounded, and mode switched into magnanimous and sporting.
Yeah.
which was very well done. For all these people who are still, for some reason, convinced that he's some massive sort of, I was going to be rude about it, some sort of big villain who genuinely means all of the bad things. Surely they have to look at that and go, oh yeah, this is a normal person who TV has decided makes a good villain and is okay playing up to it. You know, he didn't have to be that nice. It was kind of similar to Jonathan Schultz with Huge as well. It's like, he didn't have to be that nice in that interview. He could have put his side of the story across, but he chose to do the sort of right thing of just get through the interview. Just be nice to the opponents who are your friends and who you like, and then, you know, make a very well-reasoned Facebook post about it afterwards that explains your side of it.
Yeah.
This is another reason, by the way, that I'm completely okay with Tombstone still being in the top 32. It's like, that was such a good fight that has ended in a weird way. Would you really want that to be someone's last fight?
Well, if they'd won nothing. If they won nothing, that's...
No, it's like, I won't reopen that wound. It's fine. We'll carry on.
Yeah, I think we can move on.
You say that. We haven't really got anything to move on to. I was going to have a little rant about unaired fights, but I was meant to do that earlier. Previously, I'm going to do it anyway. Previously, I stated that it looked like we weren't getting any unaired fights, like everything was going to be shown. My evidence for that was the fact that fights like Perfect Phoenix versus Extinguisher somehow got aired, despite being, you know, a fight in which literally nothing happened. Turns out some fights were deemed worse than that.
How is that possible?
I'll be very interested to see what fights we missed, because some of the highlights managed to make some of the unaired fights look half decent. So Deadlift versus Mammoth, for example, looked like it might have been quite good. And it sounds like they cut it because a robot just kind of died halfway through. And that is an unsatisfying way to end a fight. But it's more unsatisfying to start a fight that way. We've missed out on a chomp fight because at some point they just had a breakdown. Probably still better than just watching a robot drive into a wall and stop. I can't really imagine a fight less TV worthy than that.
Oh.
And this is no offence to Extinguisher. They had a problem that it turned out a lot of teams had with faulty parts that they resolved and went on to get a win. Fair play, Extinguisher. Also, you got rid of the siren. Thank you for that. But I still wouldn't put that fight on TV.
No.
It's like, no one has come out of that fight looking good. There's the robot that broke down and the robot that was there. Why have we seen? Just don't understand. I don't understand.
I don't know. TV, man. It's weird.
What I did like that they did in what in our timeline was the last episode, in everyone else's will be the episode before last. So the last Fight Night episode was where they just cut the lengthy intro for a fight. Just jumped straight into Tantrum's fight.
Did they?
Yeah. They didn't do all the lengthy interviews. They just went, oh, coming up next, we got this fight. Let's go. And they went, and it was a good fight, and everyone was happy.
Is that how they got the time to do all the bracket stuff at the end then?
Yeah. If you just did that for 2 fights an episode, you could have a whole extra fight. It'd be great. You could have Perfect Phoenix versus Extinguisher every episode for free, basically.
Oh, God, please, no. Don't give them ideas.
I could just... If we really were influencers, then next season we could just have exactly that. Just with a thanks to Spinnerproof at the bottom. Just calling us out for our bullshit.
I'll tell you what, right? If the name Spinnerproof ever makes it onto Battlebots, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll be very happy.
I mean, if anyone we know ever makes it, I'll be giving them an extra large Spinnerproof sticker to do what they like with.
Oh God, yeah. I'm
not saying it has to go on the robot. Yeah, I think that's really reserved for sponsors. Although I could chuck them a $5, they might go for it. Yeah, just prominently on a pit table wouldn't be bad, you know.
Should we see if we can sponsor Monsoon?
I mean, the colour scheme's correct.
I'm genuinely tempted to ask. I will sponsor them up to £50 if it means that we can get a Spinnerproof sticker on their robot.
I mean, I'm running a Drizzlebots bar on an ant. I think it's only fair that they, give something back. Yeah, I've given money for their goods and services. Yeah, I haven't been fairly compensated as part of that transaction in the way that transactions work. Of course not. I demand more.
Oh dear, that would be incredible.
I fully expect you to make contact with Tom now.
I'm genuinely tempted, but this reminds me that Battlebots got a shout out on Battlebots.
Yes, it did.
Yeah,
I think that's the first time they've mentioned another show by name.
yeah. I just thought that was pretty cool.
In the show notes, we'll have a link to that 4K subscriber special that they've already done. I fully expect you, when that does come out, to come back to this episode's show notes and edit that in.
No. Why would I do that?
The memes.
So if you remind me, maybe I will, but I doubt I'll remember.
No, it's your job to remember. I've just made it your job.
Brilliant.
That's how that works.
Okay, well, then that's your mistake then, isn't it?
Any more musings on BattleBots in general, or should we indulge in some robot building talk?
I think that we've spoken long enough about other people, and now we can do nothing but talk about ourselves for however long it takes for us to get bored.
We've given what will be post-edit, I reckon at most, 40 minutes of attention to the... I need to do the maths now. Probably like 8 hours of BattleBots content that we've missed in the past few weeks. I think that's a good enough ratio.
I think that's an excellent ratio. I think that's the best ratio we've ever managed.
To be fair, we might actually match that ratio in terms of time spent building robots, time spent talking about building robots. So maybe that's fair after all.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the two things are equal in terms of broad appeal. High production value Discovery Channel show versus two guys building stuff.
Two guys talking about building stuff, trying to describe what they've built without a visual aid.
Hey, you've tweeted photos and videos and things.
I have, that's true. Giving away all of our secrets.
Right. You go first, because frankly what you've done is more impressive.
No, you go first, because yours is much cooler.
I go first, because what you've done is far more impressive. We should end on it. Got you. I do CNC now. CNC is really fun. I'd like it a lot, and I'm going to have to work really hard not to massively overuse it.
I wish that we could go back in time and just sort of like, it's just like just funny thinking like when we started Spinnerproof, right? Of the two of us who would have a CNC machine or have access to a CNC machine and then be CNCing robots and stuff, I would never have thought it would be you.
So,
and I mean that in the kindest way possible.
Oh, I didn't either, don't you worry. So the full story is, I work at a school. I work at an infant and nursery school, which means we have children from age 3 to 7. This is not the kind of place you expect to find a CNC machine.
Why have you got a CNC machine in a forge, for crying out loud?
Not a forge, a foundry.
A foundry. I'm so sorry. Why? Why have you got these things?
So it comes down to two things. First of all, having a really cool colleague. And second of all, having a pretty cool school. So I won't get bogged down in this. We're what's called a Reggio Emilia school, which is basically an educational philosophy that originated in Italy that is all about sort of child-led learning. Child-centered makes it sound like other people aren't focusing on the children, which might be true, but oh well. That's their problem. So yeah, it's kind of child-initiated learning, following what they find interesting. It's a little more vocational as well. It's not necessarily focused on academics. It's giving children a lot of hands-on experiences making and doing things. And it's about trying to link the classroom environment with the natural world. All of those are quite kind of airy-fairy things, but it comes together into a setup that I really enjoy being part of, basically. Cool colleague is our sort of creative lead. He's a big sort of woodworking guy and just generally into trying out new stuff. Because of him, he's been there a couple of years before me. Because of him, we've got like a sort of full clay setup, including a kiln. Really good woodworking setup that we're now doing training for other schools with. And the foundry and the CNC machine are both sort of his doing. So the foundry we built ourselves because we could, because we thought it'd be fun to try and cast aluminium.
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of put that on the back burner for now because that's something we can only really do outside, which means we can only really do it in summer. But over summer, we didn't have any children. The CNC machine is technically his. He has bought it, but it's living in school because that's where there's A, the space, and B, the sort of collaboration opportunities. So me and him are the people collaborating on it. Because I've already got some experience with 2D design, I've kind of taken on the software side of things, and he's handled the hardware side of things. So I've spent a lot of time after work in the last couple of weeks, and a whole day today, because today's our half term, it's our week off, basically just learning to use the machine so that I can teach him to use it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So its school use is more artistic than anything. So it's lots of kind of engraving into wood. Our end goal is to be able to take sort of images and writing from children, scan it, and then carve that into wood. That's the thing we really want to do with it in school. We're pretty close to doing that already. That's been a lot easier than we thought. There's only really one hurdle left, and that's the actual scanning and digitising side. And we're also hoping that it's going to be kind of an income stream for the school in terms of we have a woodland area, and we've got a lot of wood that we've harvested from that, just from trees that needed to be felled. And we want to turn that into stuff. So again, the main thing I've been doing the last couple of weeks is sort of stuff like engraving the school logo into pieces of wood. Really satisfying work. It is amazing what a CNC machine can do basically out of the box. You know, this thing is just chewing through hardwood so happily, getting these super crisp, super clean cuts. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Awesome.
Today I sort of got the bravery to do a much bigger piece than I've been working on before. Because obviously it's a new machine, you need to shake it down. We have had some issues with set screws coming loose, because that apparently is a universal problem, not just for Battlebots wheels. We've had issues with that, we need to get that sorted out. Didn't really want to run any long cuts, but today I finally ran a sort of half-hour program on there. And man, the feeling of picking that thing up afterwards, looking at it and going, I made that happen, is unbeatable. I've kind of had it with some robot stuff, but let's face it, nothing that I've done myself has ever been quite the quality I wanted it to be. Often it's been as funny or as weird as I wanted it to be, but in terms of, the cleanness of it, the crispness of it, it basically being the size and shape it's meant to be, it's always just been there or thereabouts. So the experience of making a thing that is exactly how it's meant to be, I'm really enjoying. I've had an ant weight designed since, I think, late summer last year for an ant weight horizontal spinner that I was always planning to outsource the actual making of.
Yeah.
I tried doing some of it by hand. I couldn't quite get it as accurate as it needed to be. And I was more than happy, having tried it by hand first, to outsource it to get it right. I think what I've decided lately is that I think ants are going to be the place that I try to make things good, and beetles are going to be the place where I try to make things weird and entertaining. Because let's face it, ant weights, they're for the builders, not for an audience. So for me, with solo builds, I'm just going to do stuff that pleases me with ants, and not focus so much on, enjoying the build process in the same way that I do with beetles. I want stuff that's going to go out and work. And if it doesn't work, I want it to be because the design is bad, not because I didn't have the patience to cut the thing properly. That's my kind of feeling with that.
Yeah.
So this thing that I was going to outsource, suddenly I can do it myself.
You can in-source it.
Yeah, exactly. And I now have next to me a completely... it's not even that perfect, actually. There was a problem with the cut. But a completely functioning chassis for this robot that, rather than being, 3 attempts to cut by hand, I stuck the bit of plastic down once, ran it, and it just worked. And, hours went into that beforehand in terms of designing it, but I would have done that anyway to cut it by hand. So for the moment, I'm really enjoying this idea that I can basically rapid prototype now.
Yeah, no, that's super cool, man.
There are some flaws in this design that I can fix and go again, and it's not, a half-day time investment to cut it out. And I know that the flaws are in the design and not my making. And then today, I was working with it again, and do you remember ages ago I designed a Kilotron replica? I cut out one of the sides for that, so that I could see how close I got to it with my handmade version. Answer was, nowhere bloody near. I've taken the design that you've got for what you're going to talk about and did a version via CNC to see if I could, with a couple of features that wouldn't... they would just about be doable by hand, but features that would be very difficult by hand, that I was able to add to it because I had that there as a tool. So it kind of, for me, it's a tool that's changing the scope of what's possible. And it's kind of unlocking things that I wouldn't otherwise try, which is maybe a weakness of me as a kind of hand builder. But I'm kind of fine with that. I think, some of the weaknesses of me physically making stuff, I believe, rightly or wrongly, are to some extent innate. There is a ceiling to my hand-eye coordination, basically. And I think I'm quite close to that ceiling already with a lot of things. I'm not sure that there's an amount of time and practice that will make me able to do things significantly better than I already do. And if there is, I'm not sure I want to spend the time developing that when I could be spending the time using the tools that are now available to me to make stuff. But at the same time, I am worried. I can already feel it happening. All I want to do now is sit at the computer and design stuff to cut when I've got an unfinished beetle weight out there. And an unfinished ant, actually, that I'd made on the bloody machine. So I have got to be quite mindful of how easily I could get sucked into just now doing this one thing. And I do want to keep hand making some stuff. I don't want to lose that.
What you've been talking about, sort of thinking about where the satisfaction comes from and stuff. And I actually think the majority of it is in the design bit of it. It's like, oh, here's a design that I've got. And then the realization of that design in the real world, it's like you've done some drawings, on the computer by hand, by whatever. And it's like, now here it is in the real world. And I think how it goes from a design to the real world is somewhat immaterial, actually. So I think the majority of the excitement and the joy comes from the design thing. But it is interesting you say about, like, now you've got the CNC and stuff, it sort of changes the way you think, and you maybe use the CNC more than you would have expected and stuff. And I do think that is interesting, and I think I've sort of seen it happen on a few like YouTube channels that I've been following for a long time. And there's a definite sort of like pre-CNC, post-CNC set of videos that they've made and stuff.
Are you thinking Colin Furze right now?
No, well, that's probably a good shout, actually. The one I had in mind was Frank Howarth, who's like a woodworker. Yes,
that's very reasonable, actually.
Who uses the CNC for a lot of stuff now, and probably more than he needs to. But that's fine. Yeah, it's not a criticism or anything. It's just an interesting artifact of having the CNC.
I think the dividing line for me at the moment is that I don't want to make anything on there that we haven't tried to do by hand. And I say we just because I have made a bit that I personally haven't tried to make by hand. Really what I want it to be is that I haven't tried to make by hand.
I haven't finished trying to make that part by hand, and you're already seeing it.
No, for real, this was a question of I needed to test how well the machine could pocket. I was doing a lot of stuff with step over for annoying reasons, and I wanted to test that out, and this was something that was worthwhile to make. It's the reason I did it, but it is interesting to me that, I could have just made a really random test design for that would have been quicker than working out all the toolpaths for the bits of this that weren't what I was testing. But my head did go straight to, I can make a usable part here. Maybe that's dangerous, I don't know yet.
I was really pleased that you were able to take that drawing and then turn it into a CNC part.
It was a good drawing. Although I don't know if what I've got here is right. I might send this to you just so you can compare it to what you have.
That'd be really interesting. I think you've got some extra holes that I haven't drawn. But
yeah, so you hadn't drawn the holes above the motors that you wanted to be for those kind of through rods. Or if you had, I couldn't see them on the drawing. So I just made my own versions of them. I went for 4 rather than 2 because it just looked better. And that's really what matters here.
Naturally. Yeah, no, I did draw them, but the scanner lost it. So.
But yeah, CNC is certainly looking like a very powerful tool. I'm really enjoying working with it for the work stuff as well, not just the robot stuff. It's a very satisfying thing. I think it's given me a whole new class of problems to solve. I've always said I'm in this for the problem solving. I like problem solving, and the hard part is finding new problems. This has given me a whole set of problems. And what I'm also finding really interesting is that I've been able to pick it up super fast, partly because I've got a little bit of 2D design experience, but mostly because I've watched so many YouTube videos that involve some CNC. I was able to load up the software, look at it and go, oh, I've seen most of this before. I know what most of this does. It was only after about 3 days that I actually read the instructions for the software. because there were sort of more advanced things that I realised I'd like to know how to use. There was so much stuff that I either already knew to a certain degree or knew I didn't know and knew I needed to learn about.
Yeah.
Just because I'd seen it done by other people.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I'm glad that YouTube is sufficiently educational.
Even when it's not trying to be.
Even when it's not trying to be. Yeah, no, you're right, though. Like, just exposure to the sort of concepts and stuff is often enough to let you to sort of really open the door. Because it's like, well, now, like you say, you know what you don't know. Or you have words to search that you wouldn't maybe come up with on your own and stuff. Like, you sort of knowing the name of something or a type of toolpath and stuff like that just really, I think, is enough to really get your foot in the door for that kind of stuff.
One thing I should say on that subject, by the way, is some of them may listen to this. Big thank you to all the folks on Discord who did help me out with the one problem we had with the machine. When we first had it, it really wasn't running right. And they helped us sort of solve that. And now it's running beautifully. So thank you to all those people. There were like 5 or 6 people who weighed in. I don't want to try and name people because I will forget a couple. But big help. Love that. Community.
Awesome.
The one thing I'm going to promise this publicly now. I'm going to make sure that I still bring janky crap to Beetle events.
Oh, God.
Because I've come around to seeing beetles as the real starter class in the UK. Ants have their benefits for someone who is a complete beginner, but I think that beetle is the starting point. And it means something to me to be someone who is hand building in that class. I think there will be parts that I will use this for. You know, the inconsequential stuff, the massively important but hidden stuff, like, you know, motor mounts, like, you know, these weapon bulkheads, things that I know I could do by hand, but at this point they're a solved problem. I gain no joy from designing and making them. They're just a chore. That sort of stuff I'm happy to automate away so I can maintain the fun and the joy of building the new bits.
I am determined for your move to be entirely hand-built.
Oh, and I think it absolutely will be, because you've proven that you can do the bits we need to do that might have required this by hand. But, you know, if we had another situation like we had on Hello there, where we want to strip some weight out of a 20mm frame rail.
Oh, God, yeah. Doing that on a CNC.
Do we do that with a hammer and chisel again? Or do we chuck it on the machine?
No, but I'd probably do it with a Forstner bit or something. There are still ways to do it without going to a CNC, man.
There are, but maybe I just value my time more than I did then, because I have less of it now.
Yeah.
And I think for me, an hour and a half with a hammer and chisel and really janky work holding where we broke a couple of things that we then had to fix, versus what would probably be a 10-minute setup and a 20-minute piece of code. I feel like reclaiming that time is probably worth something. For me.
Absolutely, yeah.
But again, I'm definitely not going to force this into our joint builds. And if I ever am doing that, shout at me. Loudly, with your fist.
Brilliant.
I think that's everything I have to say about my building. I think you should talk about yours.
I think what you're doing is really cool. I'm really pleased that you've got access to that kind of stuff. And keep going. Keep doing it.
Oh, I will. Even if you didn't approve, I'd keep doing it. So, you know, don't act like you have power here.
I find it so funny that you're going into this high-tech CNC stuff, designing on a computer, and I have been sat with like a pencil. Been sat with a pencil and a ruler and like a pair of compasses and stuff, just sort of designing stuff by hand.
To be fair, that was the way it went with Hello there as well. I did a lot of digital design. You did a lot of physical design. I'm not sure it's that out of character. It's just that I thought... I've just realised... I thought I was doing that precise design because you would then make it as precisely as I designed it. Now I've got a machine to do that instead. I've just replaced you.
Ah, damn it.
I've insourced the Sam.
Is next episode just going to be you and then the sounds of a CNC machine?
Oh, I'm totally recording a little bit of that for you to put in now.
What did you think of the latest Battlebots episode?
Excellent. We have our new intro sound there as well. wonder if I could recreate that intro sound with the machine.
Do it.
I might try. Anyway, tell us about your stuff.
Right. Well, what have I done? I feel like I've done a lot and also not a lot.
You've done a lot.
Right then. So what I have been working on is your move. We finally started taking some steps towards having that be an actual robot that exists. So I've been trying to figure out how to do the weapon for it. So we still want it to be a hammer, obviously, and it needs to be a more assertive hammer than Hello There had. A better one, a more effective one.
I like assertive. Stick with that.
An assertive hammer. So yeah, I've been trying to figure that out. I bought some cogs on eBay. I attached them. Oh, right. So I want to tell you, I've been working on that. We'll get to all the details of that. But I want to say PVC sheets are brilliant. They are so good. It's been revolutionary for helping me design stuff. So as we've discussed, I don't design on a computer, and I've tried to learn Fusion, and I could learn Fusion if I needed to, but I don't need to, and I don't enjoy it. So I much prefer doing it by hand. It's so much easier, and PVC is fantastic because I can cut it by hand with a craft knife or something, or
with a sharp fingernail.
A sharp fingernail, yeah. You can just cut it, and it's precise enough, and then you can drill into it, and it's got enough stiffness and enough plasticky properties. I don't know how to describe it. It's just a really good material.
Plasticity?
Yeah, well, because it holds. You can thread into it just about. It's got enough rigidity, enough structure to it that you can actually prototype actual mechanisms. Before this, I sort of tried ideas with foam core and stuff, and that's enough to get an idea of geometry, but you can't build anything with that's got any kind of meaningful strength.
It would have been great to do the prototyping we did for Hello There in PVC rather than foam board.
Yeah, it would have been, and I think we'd have learned a lot from it, and it would have been really good. And the other thing, you can get PVC sheets in the same thicknesses of HDPE that we use. So I've got 3, 5, and 10 millimeter PVC sheets that I can work by hand, and I don't have to make an enormous mess with saws and stuff, and then having to hoover up all the plastic shavings and stuff. It's just so much easier to work with. So I've been using that, and like I said, I bought some cogs and stuff, trying to figure out a way of driving a hammer through that kind of linkage. We've talked about doing belts and stuff, but I don't know. They're just not interesting. I just find the aesthetic of a cog-driven hammer far more pleasing. So
there's something about the cogs, isn't there? I've come around to it too. I like the idea of the kind of slippage and stretch that's afforded by the belt setup. The sort of insulation from the shocks. But the cogs are just cooler. Yeah,
so I've been doing that. And, if you follow us on Twitter, you'd have seen that I did a version of that had 2 of the 1,000 RPM sort of DC motors that are cheap on eBay driving it. And that was enough to show that from that experiment, I learned, A, don't put the motors vertically behind the hammer, because then you can't bring the hammer back very far. But I also learned, that we can place holes accurately enough to get cogs to mesh properly, which is something that I wasn't sure I was able to do. So that's sort of been really, really cool that works. Those cheapo motors have more torque than I expected from them. 2 of them is enough to, well, I'm not sure if 2 of them is enough to self-right a full weight thing, but they're torquier than I expected, which is pretty cool. What else have I done? I got a brushless motor, finally got into the world of brushless. I would like to say a huge thank you to Joe for very kindly flashing the Antweight ESC thing that they sell to do forwards and reverse for me, because I couldn't be bothered to figure out how to do it.
That's Joe Brown from Bristol Bot Builders and the Joe Brown YouTube channel. Not just any old Joe.
Not just any old Joe. The Joe.
If you think you know a better Joe, you're wrong. He's the prime Joe.
The prime Joe. And you should all go and buy stuff from Bristol Bot Builders, because they are all awesome. But yeah, so I got an ESC from there and got I found a brushless motor with an ESC on eBay that I thought would be good, and the motor's fine, but the ESC is weird. I don't understand it at all. The arming sequence is bizarre. You can't stop the motor with it. I just don't understand what it's for.
It's for spinny fun times. Spinny fun times so fun that you never want them to end.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't use it at all for robot combat. I guess it was designed very much for drones, where I guess as soon as you turn the transmitter on, the propellers just start spinning at a low speed. But I don't know. It was all very strange, so I got a replacement ESC from BBB, which is cool.
Buh-buh-buh.
I feel like I'm rambling. Have you got any questions? I don't know where to go. I feel like
I mean, I'm amazed by how much power there is in that tiny brushless motor. So you're using the same brushless motor that we usually use for ant-weight spinner weapons, which I have next to me so I can read what it is. Yeah, so it's an 1806 motor.
Yeah.
And I don't want to try and explain what those numbers mean, but it's small.
It is small.
And that has got power equivalent to, if not greater than, two of those big Beetleweight drive motors.
I think so, yeah. I think it's got at least as much power. It's certainly quicker. That was the other thing I did.
Yeah, so the acceleration is much better on it.
The acceleration of brushless is so different. It's so weird. It feels much less instant to me, anyway. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it feels like there's a bit of lag before it sort of really gets moving.
That could be because it's a sensorless motor.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, right. So brushless motors, I guess. I can talk about more about that. So Alex Mordew has written a fantastic guide on mounting 22mm planetary gearboxes to those motors. And that was for doing brushless drive conversions for Beetleweights. So if you have seen a brushless drive in a Beetle, it's probably this kind of thing, one of these 1806 motors with a planetary gearbox on it. So I bought a bunch of motors with the planetary gearboxes on it and then followed that guide to pull the pinion out of the DC motor, replace the pinion in the brushless motor with the one from the DC motor because that's got a really tightly attached... What did I say? I pulled like the shaft and the pinion out of the DC motor and put it into the brushless motor. That's what I'm looking for. Because the pinion gear on that shaft is incredibly tightly mounted and isn't going anywhere. So did that, put it all together, which was good. The guide is brilliant. It lists everything you need. You should absolutely follow it. You can get away without an arbor press or a vise. I did it with the with a pair of the quick grip clamp things that I got from Wilco, not sponsored.
That was super sketchy.
Super sketchy. I wouldn't recommend doing it. But if you're patient and if you're willing to drill holes in those clamps, you can do it with those.
Oh, you did drill a hole in the clamp. I thought you had.
Yeah, there's a hole on both sides of it now for various things to thread through and stuff. But it's and I ended up, in order to get the new shaft into the brushless motor, I ended up using 2 of these clamps in series, I guess. So you'd sort of do it as hard as I could with my hands on the first clamp and then get the second clamp on the handles of the first one to tighten it even more and stuff to get enough pressure to move it through. To my surprise, while you're pushing the shaft in, you do have a surprising amount of control about how quickly it's going in. I was really worried when I was doing it that it was going to suddenly jump way too far, but it didn't. So it's definitely possible, but it is sketchy and a bit nerve-wracking. And I only bent one M2 screw doing it.
So very impressed in general that you got that done with the equipment that you had.
So am I. I'm super glad. So the thing that I'm really grateful for with what Alex wrote on his instructions is the screwdrivers you need, because I didn't own any Torx stuff before that. And he listed on there, you need a T4 and a T6. I have no idea. I would never have known how to figure that out. If all I had was the Torx screw, I don't know what sizes they are. I don't know how to figure that out. So I'm super glad that he listed all the tools that you need as well as just the as well as just the parts. So,
I mean, Alex Mordew, just a great guy, great roboteer, great guy. The work he's put into this tutorial in particular and other things that he's put out is incredible. I mean, you can literally go and basically download Sore Loser.
Yeah.
With full detailed documentation. The guy's a machine.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of everything robot-y that I've figured. I mean, I guess the other stuff is cutting materials with some degree of precision for a change.
Precision.
Is that what's next? I don't know. Is that
go for it? That seems like a reasonable order to tackle this in.
I still feel like I'm rambling. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I mean, I was rambling. I think it's worth mentioning at this point. Obviously, you've been using Kylo Ren as a test bed for this.
Yeah.
I really love the look of Kylo Ren with a hammer. I absolutely love how that looks, and I kind of want to compete with it.
Well, I mean, if we might end up with 2 sets of hammer stuff, so it could certainly be doable.
You see, here's the thing. I'm kind of sat here with what I think is a functional version of this weapon system pretty much in my hand, minus all the electronics and minus pretty much everything. I've built this thing. I could put it in a robot of my own and, claim credit.
You could do.
Because there is an event hopefully happening this year that I'm planning to go to solo.
Oh, get you.
Now, I've been asked to help out with it on the sort of back end. And it was like, yeah, bring a robot. So I was like, I could do that. I could bring a robot. Don't know what, but I could bring a robot. And I was thinking that I might give Darth Maul a run out for it, because I have been doing more work on Darth Maul, the Smee clone. But a hammer would be way nicer. And if it was a good hammer, then even better. And if it was an opportunity to test out a system that we haven't yet run on your move, even better.
Well, I mean, you can certainly do it with two of the gear motors without brushless.
That's what I'm thinking I would do. I would probably go with the geared version just for cheapness. And the fact I can run them off a single ESC as well is nice. Less wiring.
Right. Well, why you've brought that up, I'm curious. I want to ask the audience. Apparently, well, what Ryan tells me anyway, is that you can't run 2 brushless motors off a single ESC. And I can understand why that wouldn't work for a sensored brushless motor, but I don't understand why that's the case for sensorless ones. Like, why could you not, assuming you had all the wires matching up and stuff, why could you not run multiple motors off of one brushless ESC? Because they're just AC motors, aren't they? Like, I don't see why you couldn't run 2 of them off of the same circuit.
There's no reason that they should know what's going on. I'm wondering, you know more about how electricity works than I do. When you're running 2 brushed motors off of a single ESC, you chain them, don't you?
I mean, the motors are in parallel in the same way that they'd be in parallel.
Oh, they are. They are in parallel, aren't they? It's just, the way I put them together is chaining them, but that's the same electrically as in parallel. What does that do for the voltage and current? Does it remain the same across both?
The voltage across each branch is the same, but the current is half. So if you had if you were running, well, it depends how you look at it. So if you're current limited and you can only put 12 amps into it, you'd have 6 amps across each motor, I think.
So if you overspec the ESC and the battery, probably just the ESC in this case, realistically, if you overspec the ESC to be able to deliver what both of them want, they'd run at their full potential.
I would think so. Like, I can't think of a reason that if you put a 24 amp brushless ESC on there that you couldn't run 2 12 amp motors. But I guess the thing about motors, is it's not really like you have a 12 amp motor. Like, it draws the current it draws given the load it's under. So I don't know though. I don't get it. If someone could clarify that, it would be great.
Yeah, anyone who knows their brushless, please help us out, because we understand this as a thing that we have been told by intelligent people. Just like to know why. Not why it's true, but why intelligent people bothered talking to us in the first place.
Oh dear. Right, I'll carry on with the hammer stuff, I suppose. So in testing, so far I've been building all the prototypes for this, like a gearbox for the I don't mean like I call it a gearbox, like the bulkheads that hold the whole weapon mechanism and stuff. Like, it's got 2 gears in it, it's roughly box shaped. I'm going to call it a gearbox.
You've basically got a whole self-contained weapon assembly, haven't you?
That's what I'm aiming for, yeah. That's what I'm aiming for, is it just a weapon assembly that you could just drop into the robot, which would be pretty cool. And so I've been prototyping that out of the PVC sheets, which is great. But I finally exceeded the limits of what that can do. And I think I don't think I've quite stripped, but I've certainly worn down some gears trying to self-right.
Oh, you did damage that gear. Okay.
It's fine. They're cheap enough to get more of, and I've got more on the way. But so yeah, finally wore down what that was, or finally came to the limit of what the PVC stuff could do. And so I've been building designing and then building a proper one to be made out of HDPE. And I am so pleased with what I have. So pleased.
I'm very impressed by what you made.
It's so good. I sat down for, I don't know, a couple of hours probably with my pencil and my ruler and my pair of compasses and stuff, and designed on paper a gearbox for this thing. And then I scanned it into the computer, so I had a backup of it, and then I could cut it all up and use that as a template for cutting out of proper plastic, out of HDPE. So something that I think I didn't make clear in that little video that I made is I know in principle how to do precise things, like you cut outside the line and then you move up to it slowly. What I never really knew how to do was do that with plastic, because like whenever I see people doing this on YouTube, it's always with wood or metal, where you can use sanding or filing.
Yep, and most of them have a disc sander or a belt sander that they just run it up against, and they get a nice flat edge at 90 degrees automatically.
Exactly. And I was like, I don't know how you do that with plastic. Even if I had a disc sander, I don't know how that wouldn't work on plastic. I don't think it would melt and gum up and be all kinds of horrible, I would think.
It's not pleasant, yeah.
So I don't know what gave me the idea, but I suddenly sort of thought, because I sort of thought, well, I can shave bits off with a sharp knife, and then it's like there's a tool for this. It's called a plane, and so I bought a hand plane, and that is.
So you flew to someone who could CNC it for you.
I bought a hand plane, and that's enough. So I can cut outside the line, and then use a hand plane to shave off what I need to get right up to the line, and it's this nice straight cut. And I also learned from the YouTube comments, and then my dad. About a shooting board, which is a thing, like a jig thing you can make for hand planes to get this so that it is that perfect 90 degrees. The very next day, one of the people I follow on YouTube used a shooting board. I'd never seen it before this moment. I've never even heard of it. And then the day after I'm told about it, I see it on a bunch of YouTube videos. It's ridiculous.
Well, you just never noticed it. That's also a thing that I have a lot.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, that's interesting. So I think I'll probably make one of those at some point to get even more precision out of it. But I'm pleased with that. What else? I feel like I've learned so many. All right, I'm gonna make myself look like an idiot for the benefit of all humankind.
Such a martyr.
I'm gonna tell people about screws, because this is the other thing. I know this is a bit of a left turn from what I was just talking about.
Well, I mean, really, if you're trying to tighten, it'll be more of a right turn.
But I just want to I just want to talk about screws though, because I learned a bunch of stuff about screws. So I finally ran out of the like M3 machine screws or bolts, whatever one you call them. I ran out of those, and I sort of was started to think about need to buy some more. And so I worked myself up into a bit of a frenzy trying to figure out what kind of driver to buy for this stuff. Do I get one that's, because I hate the slot ones are terrible. They're cheap to make, but they're terrible in every other way as far as I'm concerned. I thought about getting a bunch of like hex ones, because I sort of thought it'd be nice to sort of like be consistent with all the bolts and stuff that all have the same kind of head driving thing. And I've decided that hex is the worst thing in the world, because hexagons are basically circles and they make for terrible driving things. I don't understand why they exist.
But hexagons are the bestagons.
They're not the bestagons. I mean, they're not. No, I'm not even going to agree with it. They're not the bestagons. They make for terrible screwdriver bits. But in my research, I'm obviously familiar with Phillips head screws and Phillips screwdrivers. And then I came across what I think is pronounced Posidrive, but it's spelled
I'm so glad you said that. I have become a disciple of the Posidrive.
So
from the woodworking training I did at work, I discovered them. I got one for Christmas. It has revolutionized the shed.
It's so right. Okay, right. So I've always had just in my head, I've always just referred to this kind of stuff as just crosshead. That's always been the same thing for me. And I've known that there's like weird, different, like some screwdrivers have weird extra little bits that I never understood, and some screws have like an extra little cross drawn on them. Didn't understand why. But now I understand why, and I shall dispense to you, the listener, the information about it. So I've always had mixed feelings about Phillips, right? Because it's universal, which is great, but those screwdrivers cam out like crazy, and I hate it. They cam out all the time, which is where you're sort of like, if you put too much torque, the screwdriver just pops out, and it drives me up the wall. And what I've learned is that Phillips is designed to cam out. That's the point of it. It's self-centering and designed to pull out if you put too much torque through it. Posidrive is like an improvement, or not an improvement, but it's like a different version of that I think
it's an improvement.
well, I think it's an improvement, but like Posidrive doesn't cam out. So you should use Posidrive because it's better.
It's amazing how such a tiny difference makes it so much better. And you have to have the right screws.
And the right screwdriver.
Yeah, so obviously it has to be a Posidrive screwdriver. You're looking for screws that have an extra sort of lightly marked X.
Yeah.
Sort of 45 degrees around from the crosshead itself. My word, the difference. I have some screws that are Posidrive, some screws that aren't. So I'm now having to use 2 different screwdrivers for Darth Walk the Beetle.
Oh dear.
So worth it to get that Posidrive in those Posidrive screws. So worth it. You've seen me struggle with screwdrivers a lot.
Yeah, well, I struggle with them as well. So what I discovered is that all the screws that I have are Posidrive, but until very recently, I only had Phillips screwdrivers, and so I got none of the benefits. If you put a Phillips screwdriver in a Posidrive screw, it will cam out. So when I bought Posidrive screwdrivers by accident. It's only been like this week that I've sort of gone and inspected all my screwdrivers and inspected all the screws and learnt that, oh, I do have both. They are different. I can tell them apart now. And Posidrive screwdrivers in Posidrive screws are the best. So I'm pleased with that discovery, and hopefully people can learn from my stupidity in this matter.
You know, for all of our differences today, hands across the ocean in support of Posidrive. Probably the greatest kind of screwdriver, and anyone who disagrees, frankly, should know. This is now a Posidrive podcast. And if you're not on board with that, get out.
Hashtag not sponsored. I will say though, I think I do prefer Torx. I think that it's a better.
Did I stutter?
The limited experience I've had with Torx, I really like it, but I'm not going to use it for anything because no one has Torx screwdrivers, and it'd just be irritating to be different for not a lot of benefit. So the Posidrive stuff gives me all the benefits that I wanted, which is a good amount of torque, not camming out, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah,
I do kind of want someone to come up to you at an event asking to borrow a screwdriver, and you go, "Sorry, I work exclusively in Torx, scrub."
Torx or bust. If anyone knows where you can buy Torx grub screws, I will pay good money for them.
That would be useful. Yes, we would appreciate that very much.
I want to ban hexagons from everything to do with robot building. I hate them so much.
When we finally make your move, I'm going to steal all the body panels and just mill hexagons into them.
Oh dear.
There'll be nothing you can do about it.
I think that's all the stuff that I've learnt or done recently. I think. I feel like this has been an incredibly rambly thing from me, so apologies for an unstructured look at the things I've been doing this past couple of weeks.
Might try and get a few photos of things into the show notes just to explain what on earth we've been talking about.
You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episodes/87. And there you can find links to all the stuff we've been talking about today. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us why Posidrive is the best drive.